Something has changed in the last week or so in President Trump's approach to this whole situation in Iran. He hasn't announced the change, but we're seeing it. I pointed it out in a few videos over the last week that these skirmishes that we're now seeing in the Strait of Hormuz, right, where some American ships tried to get through, the Iranians intercepted them, there was some exchange of fire, the Americans then carried out attacks on missile launch sites and drone launch sites in the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranians fired at Kuwait. They then did this again last night. There was another exchange of fire with the Americans, more airstrikes by the Americans, but it's officially not the end of the ceasefire. So there's that change. But what I want to focus on in this video, and at the end, I'll connect the two together because they're very much connected. I want to focus in on Lebanon. Okay, to get us started on this Lebanon story, because I think Lebanon is now becoming a central issue, a much more central issue in the whole story of Iran, and certainly from the perspective of the Iranian regime, as we'll see. But let's start off with this short clip from Fox News.
We're also tracking developments in the conflict between Israel and Iran's largest proxy, Hezbollah. Over the weekend, Hezbollah launched more than 50 rockets into northern Israel as Israeli ground forces pushed deeper into southern Lebanon. This morning, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the IDF to strike the Lebanese capital of Beirut, specifically the Dakhya neighborhood, a Hezbollah stronghold.
I instructed the IDF to expand the maneuver in Lebanon. Our forces have crossed the Litani. They have seized dominant terrain. They captured the Beaufort Ridge, and now my instruction is to deepen and expand our hold in places that were under Hezbollah control.
Iranian officials have often tried to tie a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah to the broader agreement between Iran and the United States. And even as we speak, guys, sirens have sounded across northern Israel. Hezbollah is continuing dozens of attacks on an hourly basis against this country. Guys?
Okay, so that's the situation from the Israeli side, and we see this headline here. And this is from today. Israel's Netanyahu orders attacks in Beirut's southern suburbs. In other words, Israel's going to start carrying out airstrikes again in the Dakhya neighborhood. That is the Hezbollah stronghold in Beirut. And that's an escalation. So there's a significant escalation happening now. As Netanyahu said, there will be no situation in which Hezbollah attacks our cities and our citizens, and its terrorist headquarters in Beirut in Dakhya will remain out of bounds. Netanyahu said Israel was continuing to deepen its ground activity in Lebanon, where Israeli troops have carved out a self-declared security zone in the south, saying they aim to shield northern Israel from Hezbollah attacks. Okay, so that's level setting. Now, what's happening on the Iranian side? So I want to show you an incredible number of stories, all from one day in Iranian state media. And I haven't seen anything like this in terms of Lebanon. Throughout this war, it's like, yeah, one of the running narratives, occasionally there'll be mention of Lebanon, but look at what we see here. Front page of WANA, front page of Iranian regime media today, top story, Lebanon, Netanyahu's trap for Iran. And this comes a day after this story ran. Netanyahu expands Lebanon operations despite Iran's ceasefire demand. Right, so they mentioned that this is everything that this whole expansion is, even though Iran has demanded it as part of the ceasefire. So they're pointing out the fact that the Americans are not enforcing a Lebanon ceasefire on Israel. But that was yesterday. The next stories I'm going to show you, and it's 6 stories, all from today, are all about Lebanon. Almost every story today has been about Lebanon in Iranian state media. And it's not only on WANA, the same was true on Tasneem's website today. But look at this, Lebanon, Netanyahu's trap for Iran. So in the piece, they talk at first about the escalation, and they suggest that Israel is doing this in order to impact the U.S.-Iran negotiations, essentially arguing that the real reason Netanyahu is escalating in Lebanon is because he wants to undermine the chances of a ceasefire, and he wants to blow up the negotiations between the U.S. and Iran. Now, I think that that's a worthy goal to blow up those negotiations, but the real reason Netanyahu is doing it is what we just talked about, that Iran has been firing drones and rockets at Israeli civilian towns nonstop. That's why we're doing this. We're doing this because we have to get rid of Hezbollah once and for all, because the Lebanese government can't in any event. So they go on. This is a fairly long piece going through the whole, how they view Netanyahu's strategy and all of this. But I want to jump down here. The significance of the strikes on the southern suburbs goes beyond their military dimension. They also carry a political message, one suggesting that the Israeli government is seeking to shift pressure from the border areas to Hezbollah's core centers of influence and increase the political and social costs of the war for the group. That is absolutely true. They do want to do that, because the big problem with dealing with Hezbollah, same thing was in dealing with every one of these terrorist groups, is that they have that the countries that house them have this plausible deniability, right? The Lebanese government is like, oh, Israel has to stop attacking. Israel has to stop attacking. Yeah, but you have a terrorist group that is launching attacks on us from your territory. Oh, Hezbollah is not Lebanon. If Hezbollah was the Lebanese government, so the Lebanese government would have declared war on us. It's much easier to fight that war. But because Hezbollah is a separate organization, the Lebanese government gets to have it both ways. Well, stop attacking us. Oh, but they're not disarming Hezbollah, right? So Israel wants to make Lebanon pay a price for not dealing with Hezbollah. But really what Israel wants to do is take care of the problem themselves, because no one else is going to get rid of Hezbollah. Lebanese analyst Khalil Nasrallah argues that the decision should also be understood in the context of domestic pressures facing Netanyahu's government. So he makes the case that Netanyahu needs a win, and escalating in Lebanon is going to win him points with the Israeli public. And then it says here, the issue is that despite the escalation of attacks, Hezbollah has not been eliminated. This raises an important question. If the sole objective is to weaken Hezbollah, why has Israel expanded the conflict and increased pressure on civilian areas? So the answer they give is that this is a strategic trap. Netanyahu understands that the continuation of the current situation is not necessarily in Israel's favor, meaning the current situation with Iran, with the negotiations. Hezbollah remains active. Negotiations between Iran and the United States continue, and Washington shows little appetite for becoming involved in another regional war. So under these circumstances, provoking a direct Iranian response could alter the equation. And from Tel Aviv's perspective, it hasn't yet come to pass. In other words, they're arguing that the Israelis want to blow up the negotiations and provoke the Iranians to attack in defense of Hezbollah. Now, when has Iran ever attacked Israel to defend Hezbollah? Very, very rarely, almost never. Iran, meanwhile, faces a complex dilemma. This is the most important paragraph of the piece. Iran faces a complex dilemma. On one hand, escalating attacks on Lebanon and growing pressure on Hezbollah fueled demands for a stronger response. On the one hand, right? On the other hand, direct Iranian involvement in the conflict could be precisely the scenario Israel is seeking, a scenario that would not only increase the risk of a wider regional war, but could also undermine existing diplomatic channels. In other words, they're reading it that Israel's trying to drag Iran into a kinetic confrontation right now to come to the aid of Hezbollah, and Iran is caught in a dilemma. That's what they're saying. I think it's much more straightforward. Iran has occupied Lebanon for decades through Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a major, major asset. As Trey Ying said in that Fox News report, it's their largest and most significant proxy. It's not even really a proxy, it's an arm of the regime. The greatest asset external to Iran that Iran has is Hezbollah, is their control of the country of Lebanon. And if they see that slipping between their fingers, if they see that in jeopardy, they could lose their regional influence. Hezbollah is a major piece of the puzzle for them. So you have this headline from yesterday that Nawaf Salam, the Lebanese prime minister, who's not Shiite, who's no friend of Israel, but he defended the negotiations with Israel publicly. because negotiations with Israel is a very controversial thing. He's saying negotiations with Israel are not capitulation. In other words, he's justifying moving forward with the negotiations. Now, the reason that Hezbollah has been attacking Israel nonstop, a big reason for it, even though Iran might be better off if they kept quiet, is that they don't want there to be any peace talks between Israel and Lebanon. They want the environment to be toxic for any rapprochement between Israel and Lebanon. They're trying to undo that possibility. And here's Nawaf Salam doubling down and coming out in public and saying, he also criticized Israel in his statement. He has to, but he came right out and defended the fact that he's negotiating. The Iranians see that as a very big problem. Now take a look at these 5 stories. The following 5 stories are all from today, in addition to the one I was just reading from. This one is also from today. But look at the next 5 stories. General Shakarchi, continued crimes in Lebanon, intolerable for Iran's armed forces. The senior spokesman for the Iranian armed forces, Brigadier General Abolfazi Shakarchi, has issued a stern warning to Israel and its backers, declaring that the continuation of military operations against Lebanon will cross a threshold of tolerance for the Islamic Republic. So he's threatening to retaliate. I don't believe they will, but if they're caught in this dilemma where do we retaliate or do we sit back, the best thing to do is just issue a threat. Brigadier General Shakarchi, the senior spokesman for the Iranian armed forces, stated that Israel has exploited the current ceasefire framework to launch overt aggressions against Lebanese territory. He asserted that these actions have resulted in the deaths and injuries of more than 3,000 innocent people, including women and children. That's nonsense. While Western leaders have chosen a path of either silence or active support for these acts against humanity. General Shakarchi explicitly warned the leadership of the Israeli regime and its international supporters that the ongoing military campaign would face regional pushback. The leadership of the brutal Zionist regime and its supporters are warned that the continuation of savage crimes against Lebanon, it's not against Lebanon, will not be tolerable for the armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran. You see here, they're also admitting that they control Lebanon, by saying this. But this is from earlier today. This one's also from earlier today. Ceasefire violation on one front is a violation on all fronts. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has issued a stern, direct warning to the United States and Israel regarding the scope of the current regional truce, declaring that any localized military breach completely invalidates the overarching agreement. In an English language post on his official X account, the top diplomat explicitly outlined Tehran's stance on the interconnected nature of regional conflict zones under the existing understanding. Araghchi addressed the situation for immediate attention, writing, "The ceasefire between Iran and the U.S. is unequivocally a ceasefire on all fronts, including in Lebanon." The foreign minister emphasized that the truce cannot be treated selectively or broken in isolated theaters. And then, you see, he mentions Lebanon there. Good. Next, this is also from today. Iran will fulfill its duty to the resilient nation of Lebanon. What kind of news story is this? Ayatollah Amoli Larijani, the chairman of Iran's Expediency Discernment Council. I have no idea what an Expediency Discernment Council is. He has reaffirmed Iran's unwavering solidarity with Lebanon, stating that the Iranian people stand shoulder to shoulder with the Lebanese nation amid ongoing regional hostilities, the Lebanese nation. In a post on his official X account reflecting on Hezbollah's historic role, Ayatollah Larijani wrote, "Lebanon's Hezbollah is the ultimate symbol of popular resistance. In the most challenging arenas, it stood shoulder to shoulder with the proud nation of Iran, making history indebted to its grandeur through loyalty and self-sacrifice." The senior official went on to address the recent military campaigns launched by Israel against Lebanon, framing Iran's support as both moral and a strategic obligation. Today, as Lebanon finds itself under the fire of cowardly attacks by the usurping Zionist regime, the honorable people of Iran stand alongside the Lebanese people on the front lines of the resistance. He concluded by noting that this solidarity serves to fulfill the duty to a nation that shows resilience at the cost of their lives. Now, this is also from today. Galibaf, naval blockade and crimes in Lebanon prove U.S. noncompliance with ceasefire. So here, this piece is pointing a finger at the Americans, saying, hey, we're supposed to have a ceasefire now. Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf has strongly condemned the escalation of military actions in Lebanon, directly linking Western-backed maneuvers to a breach of international understandings. In a statement published in English on his X account, he criticized the maritime restrictions and ongoing military operations targeting Lebanon. Galibaf stated that the naval blockade and the escalation of war crimes in Lebanon by the genocidal Zionist regime served as clear evidence of U.S. noncompliance with the ceasefire. Okay, that's also about Lebanon. And then one more. This is also from today. Iran halts message exchange with U.S. Iran has suspended all indirect negotiations and message exchanges with the United States in protest of ongoing Israeli military actions in Lebanon and Gaza, according to Iranian media reports. The decision comes in response to the continuation of crimes by the Israeli regime in Lebanon, and given that Lebanon was part of the ceasefire preconditions, and this ceasefire has now been violated on all fronts, including Lebanon. Look at that. All about Lebanon. So look at that. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stories, all from today, all from the same day, 6 stories, all about the terrible travesty of Israel attacking Hezbollah in Lebanon. And this is why I started at the beginning of this video. I said they are in an absolute panic over Lebanon. You can see it. They're panicking over it because of this shift in the approach. And Galibaf said it right there. He said the blockade and what's going on in Lebanon show that America is not really committed to the ceasefire, because what they want the ceasefire to be is literally a ceasefire, peace and quiet. They don't want to be under the gun. They don't want to be under pressure. And that way they can delay things. And there's been a shift. I said at the opening of this video, there's been a shift in the negotiating posture that has not been announced. Trump hasn't announced it, but you can tell by the behavior of the Americans, by the fact that the Americans are not calling on the Israelis to back down from what they're doing in Lebanon. They're not calling on them to. Trump isn't saying that Israel's got to back off what they're doing in Lebanon. First of all, I don't even know what would happen because the Israeli public won't stand for it. We're getting our people are being shelled. Soldiers are being killed every day by these drones by Hezbollah. There is no appetite whatsoever for de-escalation by the Israelis. But look at how the Iranian regime is panicking over Lebanon. They are terrified. With the prime minister of Lebanon, who again he's not even Christian. I say that because the Christians in Lebanon are the most open to peace with Israel. Nawaf Salam's not even Christian. He's a Sunni Muslim. The fact that he comes out and publicly justifies the fact that he's negotiating, besides the fact that a lot of media figures in Lebanon lately have been talking positively about making peace with Israel. But here's the prime minister justifying the fact that he's moving forward in negotiations. We have Israel escalating, which is putting tremendous pressure on them. If the Iranians see the degradation of Hezbollah happening before their eyes at the same time as they're seeing the United States with these targeted strikes against their missile launch sites and their drone launch sites in Hormuz, what's happening, what's shifted in the negotiating, what's shifted in Trump's approach or in the Israeli-US approach is that Iran, it's taking away the Iranian strategy of buying time, that the longer things go on, the more things tip in their favor. If with every passing day, their major assets, both in Lebanon and in Hormuz, are being degraded, but especially Lebanon, if they lose their grip on Lebanon, if they no longer colonize Lebanon, if they don't no longer control the Lebanese government, if Hezbollah actually gets destroyed and defeated, they lose a major asset and they're panicking over losing it. That's what we're seeing right now. So we're going to watch this closely. It's a very interesting development, but we should never think that this is a static situation. It is constantly changing. All right. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. I hope you found this interesting. Please drop a comment. I've also played with the lighting a little bit in this room. You can tell me what you think.